Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Vishma Bhagavan Smaradika Chaya, Sisu AC, Akshvarama Sansar Prabhupada Ki Jai, Navjaya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sago Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna, Gopa Gopida, Shama Kunda Radha Kunda, Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Jamuna Tulasi, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samavetta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to Samal devotees, all glories to Samal devotees, all glories to Samal devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Guranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Okay. This is presentation of Harinama Chintamani. This is a small poetic work by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it deals with the explanation of the holy name. So he's written this work because, of course, the holy name is the most important element in our devotional service. It's the principal anga of bhakti for us in Kali Yuga, as presented by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it is a very important sadhana. As we saw from the presentation on Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the holy name was very, very powerful, and it can take you up to Goloka, whereas even the Krishna mantra couldn't do that, but chanting the holy name can do that. So very, very powerful process. So it's not only at the end that you start doing Sankirtan, but you can do it from the very beginning, because everyone is qualified for the chanting of the holy name, even if they don't have initiation. So, and even if one is unqualified in the sense they don't have bhakti, if they accidentally chant the name, they can still get benefit from that. So it has a wide application from the lowest people to the highest people. So we have in the Chaitanya Charitamrita a description of Haridas Thakur's pastimes with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he was in Puri, Haridas Thakur lived by himself near the ocean, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu every day he would visit him on his way to taking a bath in the ocean. And he had great respect for Haridas Thakur, in spite of the fact that Haridas Thakur was considered to be an outcast. So he regarded Haridas Thakur as the greatest example of chanting the holy name, so he calls him Namacharya, the Acharya for chanting the holy name. We have persons like Rupa Goswami called the Rasacharya, because he wrote Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to explain rasa. Haridas Thakur was famous for chanting the holy name, so he's called the Namacharya. So it's explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that one time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requested Haridas Thakur to recite the glories of the holy name, so he began to say something. So based on that incident, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written this work in which Haridas Thakur begins to describe the name in its different aspects, Namabhas and pure name, and then he begins to explain the offenses. So this is an expansion of what he spoke in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also explains that he wrote this work to put in one place the various explanations of the holy name, the stages of chanting, etc. Because in the scriptures these things are there, all these statements are there, but they're all over the place. They're not all in one place. They're not consistently organized. So he's put things in one place and explained them very nicely, so it's more convenient for us. So in this way we get a very nice, consistent explanation of chanting of the holy name. The title, of course, is Harinama Chintamani. So Chintamani, of course, means a special jewel. Literally, Chintamani, money means a gem or a jewel, and Chinta means a thought. So it's a thought jewel, which means that if you have the jewel and you think of anything, it manifests. So it is similar to a desire tree, where you have a tree and you're sitting under the tree and you think of anything, and the tree manifests a fruit in the form of whatever you desired. So similarly, you have the stone and you think of anything, manifests. So that's a Chintamani, which we don't see in the modern world. But anyway, they talk about that in ancient times, and there was such a stone. So anyway, that's, of course, we have a material Chintamani, a mystical stone that can manifest things. But here, the Chintamani is Krishna. And the name is also Chintamani. So both Krishna and the name manifest anything you desire. They're non-different. So the last line says, Abhinatva nama namino. The name and the person designated by the name, that is Krishna, the name, and Krishna, the person, are abhinatva. They are abhinna, non-different. They're the same. So whatever is in Krishna is in the name, whatever is in the name is in Krishna. So that's what is explained here. So Krishna and the Nama Chintamani, Krishna, the name and Krishna are Chintamani. And Krishna is Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, a form of rasa, of spiritual rasa. So, of course, we saw from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the first line was Akila Rasamrita Murti. Krishna is the very form of all spiritual rasas. So that's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. But the name also is Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. It's also that form of all rasas. So by chanting the name of Krishna, we can realize that form of Krishna with all of his rasas. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Purna means perfect or complete. So all forms of the Lord are complete because they're one Lord. Bhagavan is complete. And of course he's Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Nevertheless, when we come to Bhagavan, even there, we make a few distinctions. Therefore we can classify the different avatars according to the amounts of qualities they show. So therefore we can have Prabhava and Vibhava and other forms. And finally we get to the highest forms called Paravasta forms. And then we come to the Purna forms. That is Narasimha, Rama, and Krishna at the very top. So of all those forms, Krishna is the most perfect. So here he's called Purna, but he's actually the most perfect form. So that is Krishna as compared to other forms of the Lord. So the name Krishna also is Purna. So through the name Krishna we can realize that perfect form of Krishna who was Swayam Bhagavan, that highest form. So it's very, very powerful. Of course, as I mentioned previously, and as explained also in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, to realize Krishna is very rare. And Narada Muni praised Gopakumar because he wanted something that nobody else had. Even he didn't have that. So he says, you have a desire that nobody else has to get to Goloka, to get to Krishna. So a very rare thing, but by chanting the name of Krishna, we can attain Krishna. Suddha means pure. So, of course, anything in the spiritual world is pure, uncontaminated by material nature. So the Supreme Lord in any form is pure. This is to distinguish the Lord from any form in the material world. Normally we think that anything with a form and qualities must be material, therefore it must be in the three gunas. But the Lord with his form his qualities, his activities, is Suddha. He's not part of the material world at all. He's completely pure. So, the name also is like that. The name we may think is material because it looks like sound and it goes in our ear, and our eardrum is material. It goes in and we hear it as sound. It looks like material sound, so it may look impure, but actually, name is pure also. And in spite of the fact that it comes into the material world, it remains pure. As the avatars and Krishna, they come in the material world, and everyone can see them, even the demons can see them, but they remain pure. They're not in any way contaminated by the material world. So the forms of the Lord in the material world are pure. Similarly, the name in the material world is pure and is nitya mukta. It's always the same, never contaminated. So the name and Krishna, who is designated by the name, they have the same qualities, full spiritual qualities. So that's why they're called abhinna. Therefore, the name is very, very powerful. We call it Chintamani. So Harinam Chintamani is the name of the work to glorify the name that can give everything. So if you have a desire tree or a Chintamani, then what would you ask for? Okay, but normally people wouldn't ask for that, would they? They would ask for anything in the material world. Give me some money, give me some car, give me some property, give me a vacation, or whatever like this. So the name can also do that. It can give anything in the material world. It's considered to be the best punya. So it could give you anything in the material world, Swarga Loka, Brahma Loka, anything. In this world or next life or whatever. Chanting the name can give you that. But then higher than that is mukti. So the holy name can also give you mukti. It can destroy all your karmas and you can get up to mukti very easily. Like Ajamil chanted the name of Narayan once and he was free of all of his karmas, past, present, future. So therefore literally he was liberated. So very easily chanting the name can give liberation. But the best thing we want out of a Chintamani is what the normal Chintamani can't give that because it's material. But the name and Krishna can give that is prema. So that's the special benediction of the name and Krishna. So that's the special boon that we want from this Chintamani, the name. So in the first chapter of this work, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur talk, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requests Haridas Thakur to glorify the name, then Haridas Thakur begins by describing how the name is situated in relation to the material world and with Krishna, and how it relates to the scriptures in general. So, in other words, he describes our philosophy, which we call sambandha gyan, and knowledge of relationships. So this word is often used. We see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says there's only 3 topics in scripture: sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana. So sambandha is this philosophy. Abhideya is the process, bhakti. Abhideya literally means that which is described or defined with the action you do, so it's bhakti. Of course you could say karma and jnana are also actions, but the ultimate action is bhakti. And what is the goal? The goal is, or prayojana is, prema. So we have bhakti, prema, and sambandha. So all 3 things have to be known by the devotee in order to get prema. If we know the process but we don't know what the goal is, it's very difficult to get the goal. You won't have much impetus to get the goal. And concentration on the goal yields the goal. So if we don't know what the goal is, we can't concentrate on it, then we can't achieve it. So we have to know something about prayojana, the goal, and then we have to know the method to get to the goal. So therefore we have to know a particular method. It's not something very general, just meditate finished or do bhakti finished. No, we have to know the details, otherwise we can't get to that precise goal. So we have to know the details of the process. But before doing that even, we need some background. We need a picture. What is what? Why we have a goal. What is the goal? What are we in relation to the goal? In other words, prema is defined in terms of jiva and Krishna. If we don't know what the jiva and Krishna are, then we can't define prema, the goal. So that's why we need the sambandha again, the philosophical aspect. If we don't have that, then the process and the goal all get mixed up. Then they become impure. So we have to know the sambandha, or the philosophical aspect. As Prabhupada says, religion without philosophy is sentiment. So we need this philosophical aspect, or theological aspect. So fortunately, the sambandha is not too difficult. Of course, in the Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami has written several works on this, Paramatma Sandarbha and Bhagavat Sandarbha and Krishna Sandarbha, all on the sambandha, three works, and one on the process Bhakti Sandarbha and one on the goal Prayojana Priti Sandarbha. So we have explained in detail, but the concepts are very simple for us to understand. So these are summarized in this first chapter. So the first element is Ishvara, the Supreme Lord. He is independent. There's no one above him. He doesn't depend on anyone else. He is the final creator, the final knower, etc. And he is conscious, as a conscious being. So we can call him God, or the Supreme Person, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, etc. Then we have his Shaktis. We have the Antaranga Shakti, or the internal energy, also called the Chit Shakti, or the Sarup Shakti. Of course, Chit Shakti means spiritual Shakti. Antaranga means internal. And it's called internal as opposed to Bahiranga, which is external, opposite, and Tatashta, which is in the middle. So we have internal, external, and in the middle energies. So that's one way of looking at it. Or we have the Chit Shakti, we have the Jiva Shakti, and we have the Maya Shakti. Other names for these. So the Chit Shakti is very important. If there is no Chit Shakti, there's no Bhagavan. Bhagavan manifests through his Chit Shakti. In other words, his form, qualities, and activities will manifest through his Chit Shakti. And the experience of prema will manifest only through the Chit Shakti. So very important for the Supreme Lord and his devotees. It manifests also the Dham and everything there. So that's one. Then we have the second energy, the Tatashta Shakti, or the marginal energy. The Tatashta Shakti, we can say, is the Jiva, or Jiva Shakti. It's a Shakti of the Lord that manifests all of the Jivas. And it's called Tatashta. Tata means a bank or a border. Sta means situated. So there's an energy which is situated on the border. So that means it's situated on the border between the spiritual world and the material world. So if you want to put it in a two-dimensional type of setting. So it's in between Shakti, the borderline Shakti. In the Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes it is like the water and the shore. And between the water and the shore, the earth, we got the little dividing line where the water meets the land. We got the earth, we got the water, and in between this little border line where they meet. So that's the Tata. So the Jiva is situated on that Tata. He's kind of in between neither one nor the other. It can go either way. In other words, he can have a dual function, either the material world or the spiritual world. So that's called Tata, situated in the middle. So this Jiva Shakti is something like the Lord because he's conscious. He has knowledge. He's unlike the Lord because he's not independent. He's not the highest. He is dependent on the Lord. He's dependent on the Lord for his consciousness. He is not like the Lord because he is called very small, anu, little particle. And the Lord is called vibhu, pervading everywhere. He's everything. And the Lord is one. The jiva is infinite in number. We have all sorts of jivas, each saying I, have separate existences. Supreme Lord may have many forms, but there's only one person, one identity ultimately. The jivas are all separate little particles. They're not one identity. They're all separate little I's or egos. So these little jivas have their little bit of free will. Of course, they're dependent on the Lord, but also they have a little bit of choice. And they have a capacity to know and to experience. And they can experience suffering or they can experience bliss. And ultimately, they can reside in two places, material world or spiritual world. So that's their tatastha nature. They can go either way. So that's the second Shakti. The third Shakti is the Bahiranga Shakti, which means external energy. This refers to material energy, Prakriti. And Prakriti expands by the will of the Lord and produces material universes. So this is very unlike the Supreme Lord and the Jiva because it is not conscious at all. Like the Jiva, Prakriti is dependent on the Lord. Unlike the Jiva, Prakriti has no consciousness at all. It is inert and dead. So in order for the material world to manifest from Prakriti, it needs the stimulus of the Supreme Lord, so he glances and puts the Jivas in there. Then it manifests universes and worlds, etc., and bodies for living entities. So the Jiva enters this Prakriti and takes a material body, gross and subtle bodies, and then he tries to enjoy in the material world. So we have four principles. Supreme Lord, Ishvara, or Bhagavan. We have his Chit Shakti, that manifests the spiritual world and everything there. We have the Achit world of matter. And then we have the Tatastha Shakti, Jiva, in between. So from our point of view, we are in the material world. We're the Jiva in the material world. So the whole point of Scripture is to get us from the material world to the spiritual world. So we have processes for doing that. Of course, it's up to the free will of the Jiva whether he wants to use the process or not. So when we get a little mercy and a little bit of good fortune, then we can accept the Scriptures and begin that process of going from material world to spiritual world. So the Scriptures will describe this, because if we don't understand this, we don't know where we're going. We don't know what we have to do. We don't know why we get out of the material world at all. Why go to the spiritual world? So these descriptions are there to just give us a location where we are and where we have to go and why we have to go. So the Scriptures, the Vedic Scriptures, describe to us different processes to get us out of the material world to the spiritual world. But all these processes are not equal. They are in a hierarchy, and one process leads to another process. So these processes are described in the Bhagavatam and in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Vedas. We have the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, and in Bhagavad Gita we have chapter 3, which describes Karma Yoga. In chapter 4 and 5 we get Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga explained. And we have the Jnana Kanda, the Upanishads, which explain Jnana in the Vedas. And then in the 6th chapter we have Astanga Yoga described in Bhagavad Gita. And then we have some Upanishads also dedicated to yoga. And then we have the process of bhakti, a devotional service, which is also described in Bhagavad Gita from chapter 7 through 12. And in Bhagavatam, most of the Bhagavatam about bhakti. So all these processes are there, but they're sequential processes. The lowest one is Karma Yoga. for people in Tamagun and Rajagun. If one is fixed in Sattva Gun, one can proceed to Jnana and Yoga. Yeah? And if one is beyond the gunas, even beyond Sattva Gun, then one can do Bhakti. Yeah? So, the Karma Yoga is limited. It gives you goals in the material world with some limitation of rules and regulations so that you don't sin. So you can get material peace in this on earthly level or in upper worlds. So it is not actually a solution to the problem. It keeps you in the material world. The jiva stays bound up by my material body and karma. But its good point is that you can gradually rise up to Sattva Gun if you follow the process properly. When you're in Sattva Gun and you're very Brahminical, then you can practice Jnana and Yoga. And in these processes, you get rid of your attachment to everything in the material world. So the goal is quite unlike Karma Yoga. It is a rejection of the whole material world. And with that rejection, you can get liberation. So this is one stage, becoming detached from the material world, and you realize Atma, that we're not in the body, we are Atma. But it is incomplete because we don't have a realization of the Supreme Lord. So that is why the next process is Bhakti. We realize Atma, plus we realize Supreme Lord. Okay? And it is only with that process you can get to the spiritual world. If we do karma, we're stuck in the material world. But we could get a little more qualified and get up to Sattva Gun or Brahmaloka. Okay? If we do Jnana and Astanga Yoga, we can get in the middle portion, beyond the material world, but not in the spiritual world. Borderline area. Yeah. Like Shiva's abode. And if we do Bhakti, then we can go to the spiritual world. So that's the real abhideya, that's the real process, the complete process. The other ones are steps towards that only. Okay? So that is this is the basic philosophy we have. We have the what's what, and then we have a particular process to get there, which is the abhideya. So the ultimate abhideya is spiritual world. To get there, then we have to have bhakti as the main process. Okay? So we have this gradual process, which is described in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna starts with Karma Yoga, then does Jnana Yoga, Astanga Yoga, then does Bhakti Yoga. So it is meant as a gradual development towards bhakti. But in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there Arjuna asks, what is the better to do, concentrate on the impersonal, or in Jnana, get up to Jnana, or just do bhakti? And then Krishna says, just do bhakti. So in other words, he rejects this gradual process. Karma, Jnana, Yoga, then come to bhakti. So anyway, you come to the same goal. You have to do bhakti and then anyway, but it's more difficult. It's a longer process. So better you just do the bhakti, don't concentrate on going through all these other processes. Okay? So therefore, though we have the gradual process, finally in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna recommends Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamikam Sharanam Vraja. Just surrender to me, just do bhakti, without worrying about the other processes at all. So in other words, we can start with bhakti from the very bottom, whatever guna we're in, with faith, and we go through sadhana, bhava, prema, as described in Nectar Devotion, then we get to the spiritual world. So you can go either way, indirect, which takes many, many births, or you can go quicker, just by doing bhakti, without worrying about where you are in this level of karma, jnana, and yoga. So, therefore the preferred process is concentrate on the bhakti. Don't worry about where you are in this other processes. So within bhakti, then we have many angas. 64 angas are described in the Nectar Devotion. But as we know, of all those angas, chanting the holy name is the primary anga for us. So that we have all these types of bhakti. The main process is nama, nam sankirtan, chanting the name of the Lord. And we start at sadhana. First we have faith, then we chant the name, with sadhana. With chanting the name we get to bhava. We realize the form of the Lord. We experience some symptoms of love for the Lord, and we continue to chant the name, and that brings us to prema. When we got prema, we have full realization of the Lord, and we're qualified with a spiritual body. We can go to the spiritual world, and we still chant the name. And when we get to the spiritual world, we still chant the name. So it's an eternal process. It's not given up. If you practice Jnana Yoga, then you get liberation. You give up the process of Jnana. Or you give up the process of Astanga Yoga when you get liberation. But when you do Nama and Bhakti, you don't give them up. When you go to the spiritual world, still you're practicing. Not practicing, you're doing it. But it's all prema at that point. So the process is eternal. Bhakti is eternal, and chanting the holy name are eternal. From the beginning to the end, we continue the process. That's very, very special. So, the Lord has internal Shakti that's divided up into Hladini Shakti and Samvit Shakti and Sandini Shakti. So the Sandini Shakti gives rise to the name, the form, the qualities, the activities, and the abode of the Lord. Goloka or Vaikuntha, whatever, they all come from the Sandini Shakti. So this is a very important Shakti. It manifests all these aspects, the personal aspect of the Lord and His Dham, through the Sandini Shakti. So we can say Bhagavan is there, His Shakti is there, and then the activities and name, they kind of look like they're different, but it's the internal energy. So that it's not different from the Supreme Lord, that Shakti. Very integrated with the Lord, so therefore we can't separate the Lord from His name, form, qualities, and activities. They're all part of the Lord, because the Shakti is part of the Lord. The Bahiranga Shakti is quite separate, external. It's quite far away. It's separate. The Lord is not much interested in it. But the internal energy is intrinsic to Bhagavan. So He uses these energies for all of His activities in the spiritual world. So through His energy we have manifestation of Nam qualities, etc. So very miraculously, everything is stuck in the name. So the name has within it the form, qualities, and the activities of the Lord. They're all stuck within the name. Of course, anything spiritual is absolute, but the name is the easiest approach, most powerful way of connecting with the Lord. And within that name we can realize the form, qualities, and activities of Supreme Lord Krishna. Like that. So if we chant the holy name, we start out we're hearing the name like that, but through that then we can realize the form of the Lord, and then His qualities and His activities, His lila, and we can enter into His pastimes. So that is the progression. So we get a realization of the Lord through the name. So Prabhupada said the perfection of chanting is to realize that the name and Krishna are non-different. Nama and Nami are non-different. So that means when we chant the name, then we realize Krishna, His form, qualities, and activities. That's the perfection of chanting. So, therefore, this is the easiest way in which we can get to Krishna, through the name, because it has everything within it. Now, there are different types of names. The Lord has many names. And in the scriptures we'll have various lists of names. So we have the Vishnu Sahasranam, the 1,000 names of Vishnu. Or we get the 1,000 names of Gopal Sahasranam, the 1,000 names of Krishna. Or we get 1,000 names of Narasimhadev, etc., or 1,000 names of Hayagriva, whatever. We can have all sorts of names of the Lord. Basically, we can divide them into primary names and secondary names, Mukhya Nama and Gona Nama. So the devotees are not interested in the secondary names, they're interested in the primary names. So the primary names, or the chief names, are those which will describe the Lord in the spiritual world with His form, qualities, and activities. In other words, the personal aspect of the Lord. So therefore we have names like Gopal, or Govinda, or Govardhanadari, or Murlidhar, or Gopijana Vallabha, or whatever like this, all these Shamsundar, whatever like this, Venudari, Shankadari, whatever. These are all describe the Lord with a particular form, and it invokes the personality of the Lord. So these will induce prema, realizing the Lord, and we get prema through that. So those are the names we chant. The secondary names will describe other activities of the Lord, such as creator of the material world, a witness in all the jivas, etc., functions of Paramatma or Brahman, etc. So they will give us material elevation and up to liberation, but they don't give us prema. So therefore, we have to choose the primary names over the secondary names. Though we can say everything is absolute, we have Bhagavan, Paramatma, and Brahman. It's all one Advaya Jnanam. They're all one thing, but we prefer to worship Bhagavan and develop prema through that. You can get prema from Brahman. You can't get prema from Paramatma. So, therefore, we take the primary names which indicate Bhagavan. And you can get prema with that. Yeah, okay. So we prefer personal form over impersonal. And of course, names, Krishna also has so many names, and they're all absolute and they're all powerful. And they all give prema. Nevertheless, the name Krishna is very special. So all the names, Krishna is considered to be the chief name of Krishna. I explained last night that Krishna means he's the most powerful and the most sweet. Sweetest and most powerful. So he embodies the highest form of the Lord in terms of creating and witnessing. Plus, he has extra sweet qualities that nobody else has. Consequently, you can get the most bliss from Krishna. So then, by chanting Krishna's name, we can get the highest bliss. So special. So there are many, many names, but then of all the primary names, and the name of Krishna is the number one name. Like we say, Swayam Bhagavan, Krishna is the highest form, so the name Krishna is also the highest name of Krishna. Okay, so the name is absolute, and Suddha and Nityamukta, so it is never contaminated by anything. However, when the people in the material world chant the name, they chant it in different ways. It's not that the name is transformed, but we could say that the contamination, the jivas are contaminated when they utter the name. So we have namaparad, in which we think that Krishna and his name are not different. They're material things, like material names and forms. And we may have an offensive mentality in that also. We may think Krishna is a material being. We have animosity towards devotees and bhakti and towards Supreme Lord. So that's all part of namaparad. So it doesn't give us any progress at all. Rather, it's very detrimental for us in most cases. Namabhas, this is an intermediate process. So this means, in general, that we don't have animosity towards the Lord, the devotees, or bhakti, but we have a lot of ignorance. And we may not quite understand what the goal of bhakti is. Maybe it's mukti, merging Brahman or whatever. We're quite a little bit ignorant. We're not completely antithetical to the Lord, like Mayavadis are, but nevertheless we're not quite clear on what the goal is. And we have all sorts of impurities in us, which may obstruct our bhakti. So that's called namabhas stage. With that stage, you can get some slow progress. It works. It gives purification, as we see in Ajamil. He chanted accidentally in Namabhas and he got all his karmas removed. So it does something. But it does not in itself give prema. So we have to come to Sudanam, chanting purely. So to get to Sudanam, we need knowledge. So what is that knowledge? It's that sambandh again. We have to know that. We have to know that. We have to know the abhidheya. We have to know the goal. All this, this scriptural knowledge we need to get to Sudanam. And instead of indulging in all sorts of materialistic tendencies, we have to strive for purity. Get rid of the anarthas. So if we do that and chant Suranam as a sadhana, we get quick progress. And we can progress to bhava and then to prema. So that's why we have to get out of namabhas and get to Suranam in order to get to prema. If we just go to namabhas, we cannot get prema. So that's why we have to get Suranam. To get Suranam, then we need some knowledge. So that's why we need scriptures. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written the Harinama Chintamani, so we can get the proper knowledge. So he actually spends the next chapter on namabhas, and then most of the other chapters after that on aparads, to avoid the aparads so we can come to pure name. So he has an explanation of each aparad in separate chapters. Another way of explaining Suranam, which is actually not in the Harinama Chintamani, but it's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, is Lord Chaitanya's pastime with the people of Navadvip, or Kuling Grama. Every year they would walk to Puri from Navadvip, and they would stay with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about 4 months, see the Rath Yatra, participate there, then stay with Lord Chaitanya, and then they would go back to Navadvip after that. So one year they came, and they were associating with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and someone asked, Vaishnava K, who's a Vaishnava? And then Lord Chaitanya said, anyone who chants the holy name once is a Vaishnava. So they were rather shocked by that. How can this chanting the name once make you into a Vaishnava? But they were a little bit frightened, so they didn't ask any more questions. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were silent. And then they returned to Bengal. But then they were staying there in Bengal, and they began to discuss among themselves, what does he mean? How can it be that you just chant once and you're a Vaishnava? So the next year they went to Puri again, and then they asked the same question, Vaishnava K, who's a Vaishnava? And then Lord Chaitanya said, anyone who chants constantly, he is a Vaishnava. So when they heard that, they said, oh, very good. Very nice. We agree with that. And they went back to Navadvip. But then when they began discussing, well, why first year he said one thing, next year he said this. Chanting once, chanting always is contradictory. Why does he give two different answers? So the next year they went back and they asked the same question, who is a Vaishnava? And then Lord Chaitanya said, one who inspires others to chant, he's a Vaishnava. So, in this way, Lord Chaitanya presented 3 levels, and the idea here is that chanting once purely, he's a Vaishnava. Chanting constantly, purely, better Vaishnava. And chanting purely, who he can inspire others to chant purely, he's best Vaishnava. So he gave 3 levels here of Suranam for the devotees. Okay, what is the qualification for chanting? Now, the general qualification for bhakti is faith, or shraddha, which means faith in the bhakti scriptures. So in other words, we have faith in what I just presented here. There's a Bhagavan, there's a jiva who's separate, there's material energy, processes bhakti, all that to get the spiritual world. All this is part of the knowledge we preliminarily accept on faith. So anyone who accepts that can be in the process of bhakti. However, we have another type of exceptional case where people accidentally chant or whatever like that. They don't have any faith. So even then, you all have to be as a human being to do that. And you can get some effect. Of course, it's a type of namabhas. But nevertheless, any human being is qualified for chanting because they got a mouth and they have a voice, so they can say the name of Krishna or Narayana. And they get some effect. It's not the highest effect because it's namabhas, but they can get up to liberation that way. So it has some effect. But as far as serious chanting with faith, then we have to actually accept the Vaishnava tenets, that is the scriptural knowledge that goes along with the practice of bhakti. But in chanting the name, unlike some processes like deity worship, there's no particularity of place and time and cleanliness. You can chant anywhere, anytime, in any state. That's its universality. Any person can do it. Jnana is not like that. Only for Brahmanas. They study Vedanta. They have to be Brahminical. And they can study only in a clean place at certain times. Other times are contaminated. You cannot, certain days of the month, tithis, you cannot study Vedanta. You have to be clean. Yogis, again, have to have a certain place in the forest, in a clean place, sit on an asana, etc. Even parts of bhakti, like deity worship, need particular place, time, and cleanliness. You cannot be impure and come into the deity room and worship the deity. So a lot of processes in karma, jnana, and yoga, and in bhakti also require some, a particular limitation in time, space, etc. But holy name, no, nothing. Anywhere, anytime, any state, anybody, any age. Man or woman, child, adult, old person, student, any country, any loka, from Patala loka to Brahma loka. Yeah, anyone can chant. So it's a very universal process. So, though we have the name and it's universal, still we do need some conditions to get prema. So one is we take the primary name rather than secondary name. Now, according to Sampradaya, the goal will always be Bhagavan, but it will be a different form of Bhagavan maybe. So in some Sampradayas it's Vishnu. He is the goal. So Vaikuntha becomes the goal. In our Sampradaya it's Krishna. So therefore we take the primary name and we take specific name also. So Lord Chaitanya is not only defined Krishna, but of course we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna chanted different names of the Lord. Gopal, Govindaram, etc. like this. But finally the prominent name is Hare Krishna. So that's become the primary name in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Now all the different names. Now, one thing about the name means just calling out the name. Normally in Sanskrit, you make a sentence, and the sentence has a noun as the subject, a verb, and maybe an object. Gopal sees the kadamba tree, like this. So it's a sentence, and it's the subject is defined with an ending on the noun. Then we have the verb that matches the subject, whether it's singular, plural, first person, second person, third person, like that. So you have an ending on the verb. And then you have the object, and the object also has a particular ending to indicate its position as the object of the sentence. All right, so that's a little bit of grammar. So Sanskrit is like that. Every word will have an ending on it, and you make a statement with these words. So mantras follow this process. Usually they have Nama Swaha. So they have a subject like I offer my respects to Vasudeva. So it becomes Vasudevaya Namaha. There the subject is omitted because the Namaha it means I offer respects to Vasudeva. So Vasudevaya becomes, or Vishnave Namaha, or Narayanaya Namaha, or Narasimhaya Namaha. So it's a little ending on there. So the name is different. It's not a statement at all. It is just the name without an ending. So therefore we say Krishna. No verb, no ending. So this is called the vocative or sambodhana case, where you simply call out to the person. So that's what the name is, calling out. Govinda, Gopal, Krishna. So that's the difference between the name and mantras. The mantras are a statement. And they have, of course, particular things also, like bead syllables, etc., where name is just the name. No other syllables, just call out the name. So, very, very simple to do. You don't have to think about grammar at all. So it's calling out the name of the Lord. So that's what name is. And we take the primary name, and the primary name is Krishna. Okay. So, and of course in our Sampradaya, not only Krishna, then we get Rama, and we get Hara, which becomes Hare. So there is a little grammatical change for the feminine forms. So a feminine form like Radha becomes Radhe when we call out to Radha. So that Hara becomes Hare. Hara is Radha. So Radhe, Hare. And so Hare Krishna. Call out to Radha, call out to Krishna. So these are primary names. So we get not only the name of Krishna, we get the name of Radha. So therefore Lord Chaitanya has introduced not just Bhagavan, but his Shakti. So we get Radha Krishna worship out of that. And realization of Radha Krishna. So we use the primary name, and in our Sampradaya we use Hare Krishna. And then we have to come to Pseudonym. We can't say it Namabhas. So to get the pseudonym, we need knowledge of the process, knowledge of the philosophy, knowledge of the goal, etc. To get that, we have to depend on scripture. To get that, we need association. We need devotional association. So that association is very necessary. And instead of chanting once, we've got to chant always. As according to the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Along with that, we have favorable actions and avoid unfavorable actions, so we have to not indulge in our anarthas, etc. And we do make favorable choices in terms of food, etc. And dealing with the material world, etc. So if we follow these basic principles, along with the chanting process, then we can get prema. If we chant the name and we don't follow everything, we can get some progress, but it's not complete. We can get some progress, we can get material things, or we can get up to liberation that way, but we don't get prema. So if we want to get prema, then we have to follow these things here. Okay, that's it. Any question?
Well, could you say that the Chintamani Nam, which is wish fulfilling,
yeah.
Would you say that's a type of protection? Because oftentimes we think, well, it's wish fulfilling, we get all excited, Even materially, some people think, right, you can chant and you get everything. But could you say that the name is Chintamani because he also offers some protection to Krishna's abode, in the sense that, if you give something to someone and you say, well, you want anything, you'll get it, and then you'll stop there and you got it. But Chintamani is because he can give everything, but he can give the ultimate.
Yeah.
But there could be something in the name. They say only if you chant that name, you get the ultimate. You don't get everything else as well. But the aspect of the question basically is that the aspect of Chintamani in the name is also meant to protect the internal energy to enter for some people who really didn't deal with the lower desires there.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so they need them everything first before they get to talk.
Well, it's like Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is Mohini, and it's bewildering. So it's supposed to be like Narada Muni said, okay, you have to make everything simple for the people of Kali Yuga and tell them, okay, worship Krishna, finished. Only Krishna, nothing else. But then we find in Bhagavatam, some people read the Bhagavatam and they get a different message. They may get liberation out of it. The Jnanis will get liberation, the Karmis will get karma yoga, the yogis will get yoga, whatever. So it yields everything in it. So the Bhagavata is Mohini, it bewilders the other people and they don't see the secret because they're not qualified for it. So they get something else. So like that, the holy name also, if you want these things and you're not qualified, then you'll go for the material aspects. Chant Hare Krishna and get some material aspects, the material goals, or get up to liberation. So in other words, it does hide in one sense for unqualified people, but it also, let's say, fulfills their desires. So in one sense, it's beneficial for them. They get some contact with the name and they can progress a little bit, but they're blocked from getting the understanding the highest thing. So with anything, you need knowledge, a little bit of, actually we say faith. If we have proper faith, then we will use the name properly. If we don't have that faith, then we can just use it all any which way and get different results from it. So bhakti is a little bit specialized, so not all people are qualified for it. So they can use it and get something, but they don't get the ultimate result. Like a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So it's like that.
one of your charts mentioned that from the name comes the form. So sometimes you hear that when you're chanting you can be thinking of Krishna.
Yeah.
And others say you just chant and let Krishna appear by himself.
Yeah.
So, sometimes the thought comes to me that if you're chanting and you're thinking of Krishna's form, it's sort of like you're thinking, well, the name's not enough. You have to be thinking of Krishna as well. So what's the proper understanding?
Well, actually it's kind of absolute. So, and there's no hard and fast rules for chanting also. So on the one hand, yes, we concentrate on the name first and the sound of the name. But at the same time, we cannot artificially divorce the name from Krishna and say, okay, it's only a sound, and any aspect of form or quality or activity we're not going to think about it. And this way, we're limiting the name itself. So when we chant, then automatically we have scripture behind us, so we know what the word Krishna means. So we don't think of a black hole. We think of a black form of Krishna playing a flute, so because we have a little knowledge. So therefore, we don't artificially try to concentrate, but if it helps us in concentrating on the name, then yeah, well, why not? So therefore, it's said we should chant in front of a tulsi, or you chant in front of a deity, or you chant in front of a picture of the Lord, so that your mind is going to wander all over. At least let it see the form of the Lord instead of Maya, like that. So we chant, and then we have these other aids for us as well, like the deity form, etc. So the devotee then can chant with the form of the Lord like the deity, and then you can realize that deity in the name. So he chants Hare Krishna, and if you're with Radharaman deity, you realize Radharaman. Or with this deity of Govardhana, then you realize Govardhana. So that's the absolute stage of bhava and prema.
I think one devotee asked Prabhupada, what do we think of when we're chanting?
Yeah.
And Prabhupada says, don't think, just listen.
The other thing is that there should be devotion there. And then along with devotion we have Chinadapi Snichina Torapi Seshana, so the Kirtaniya Sadahari, so the kirtan has to be accompanied with the proper attitude as well. So we have to be humble blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree, so that these are aspects of surrender itself. So there has to be bhakti and a little bit of surrender there also.
There's so much detail about the spiritual world, material world, the chit potency, the achit potency, the jiva. And the question is, why? The question is not about why the jiva comes to the material world. The question is, why is there not enough information about the jiva's decision to choose the material world?
Why is there not enough information?
Why it seems like it's like a gray area, there's a lot of debate and controversy and all these things. So I guess the question is, why is there not enough information about the jiva's decision and why?
We're in the material world. Spiritual world is also there. We accept that on faith. But we don't quite know what it is. And it's quite different from our world. But we may project our ideas on it. So in this world, we think in terms of 3 dimensions and certain aspects of space and past, present, future, cause and effect. So all of our activities and all of our study and everything we do is kind of based on all these things, past, present, future, cause, effect, etc. But it's material. And the spiritual world does not have past, present, future. It only has present. Cause and effect do not operate in the same way. We have Yoga Maya there doing all sorts of things unexpectedly. And time, cause and effect are only because of time. So because that doesn't exist there, the questions that we have here about what happens in the spiritual world, where we come from, etc., those questions don't exist in the spiritual world at all. So it's only from our point of view, our prejudiced point of view of existing since the life of Brahma in this material world, all this, we're stuck here, whatever like that. These are questions that arise to us because of our concept of material time. So the description is that simply the jiva has choice. And those jivas in the material world, we can't really think about, the real spiritual time at all. But what we can do is take advantage of the knowledge that is here in the material world. And that is never limited. It's there in every day of Brahma, from beginning and end to the end. So all the manus are there. And then all the sages are there. And the devotees are there. And the scriptures keep appearing over and over again throughout the day of Brahma. And Narada Muni's there, whatever like that. So we have, of course, the Vedas are eternal. And the Veda Vyasa writes the Puranas, etc. Other sages write other things, or reveal things. So throughout the day of Brahma, there's plenty of opportunity for everybody to understand, get knowledge of bhakti, understand about the Supreme Lord, and develop. And of course, mercy of devotees to that, they get faith. So opportunities are there, but most jivas are not much interested in that. They're very stuck in their habitual attempts to enjoy in the material world, covered by gross ignorance. So it's very difficult for them to get out. So that is why they keep rotating in body after body throughout all the days of Brahma, throughout the whole lifetime of Brahma, and then another lifetime and another lifetime, because they're so stuck in ignorance of this material world. So therefore we shouldn't blame the Lord or anyone else for the infinite number of births we have in this material world. It's just simply because our opposition to the Lord that we stay here. We want to recognize the Lord at all, and we're interested in our own enjoyment. So that's the basic core of living in the material world. So the Lord keeps trying, and if we develop faith and do bhakti, then we have that chance of going to the spiritual world. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that you can ask these questions about where do we come from and all that, but he says the only way you're really going to get an answer, understand properly, is when you go to the spiritual world. Because then you understand something beyond time and space and cause and effect. Then you understand everything. But in our present position, no matter what explanation you get, it won't be proper.
I was wondering if you can explain, we hear these descriptions of the symptoms of one who's chanting Harinama. For example, like tears pouring from the eyes, the hair standing there, the ecstatic symptoms. And then,
well, that's Sudanam and Bhava and Prema.
Yeah, so,
but Sudanam is also in sadhana.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like the importance of associating with others who are chanting Harinama.
Mm-hmm.
That we look around, we don't really, well, I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing it, but we don't see many symptoms of people who, at least externally, showing symptoms of ecstasy or anything like that, even though they've been chanting for so many years. How do we keep that faith, like we hear these descriptions, but we don't see any evidence of it? How do we keep faith in that the chanting will lead to that?
Well, one is, of course, that we should progress. So over a series of years, we should see that we're becoming less affected by the material world and less attached to the material things, and our attachment to Krishna is increasing, and consequently we do get more satisfaction out of Krishna than the material world. That should be the gradual realization of the jiva as he progresses year by year. If it doesn't happen, it means you're stuck in you're not progressing. So at least that aspect is there, which is defined as bhakti sukha by Rupa Goswami in terms of subhada. The second quality of bhakti was subhada. So one of the explanations is bhakti sukha. You get happiness from the process of bhakti as opposed to the happiness of material enjoyment or liberation. So that manifests within sadhana bhakti. When you get to prema, then you get some ananda. So that definitely you have an experience of Krishna there. You get to prema, then it's sandrananda, condensed bliss. So in other words, we get sukha, then we get ananda, then we get condensed ananda, condensed bliss. So the happiness increases gradually. And the realization increases also. So bhava temporary realization of the Lord. It's not, Krishna's not always there. And prema is constant. So before that we don't have the realization, but we have scripture at least to inspire us.
I've heard often devotees will like suppress ecstatic symptoms due to humility. They don't want to express it even if they're feeling it. So we don't know like who's actually advanced, because the really advanced ones won't be like displaying it.
Well, the real is described later on in the I think the southern section there, when it talks about the sattvika bhavas, that goes through stages. So we get the weaker stage, the stronger stage, and the stronger stage. As you go up, then first you can kind of suppress the symptoms, and the next stage you can't suppress them very well. Third, so you cannot suppress them at all. And the next stage they're constant, and all the symptoms manifest, and you can't suppress them at all. So that those are the stages within prema. You know.
When we chant Harinama, are we calling out to Krishna directly through these words? I've heard different things. I've heard people refer to it that were saying Balaram's name or Lord Rama, and I think
even Parsaram.
I think Prabhupada said that if we understand Vishnu Tapa, then we realise there's no difference. So for myself, I find that it's helpful if I can picture what I'm thinking, what I'm chanting about sometimes. So
Gopal Guru Goswami, he's explained the Harinama, the name Rama, as quoting from, I think, Gautamiya Tantra or some other, maybe some Purana, that Rama means, Rama actually means enjoyment. It's a verb. That's how Ramate or Ramayati, to give enjoyment. So it has to do with enjoyment, or giving pleasure, or experiencing pleasure. So therefore he says Rama means the one who gives pleasure or bliss to the yogis, to devotees. So who gives bliss to the devotees? Krishna, the giver of bliss. So Rama means the giver of bliss. Of course, he gives bliss to Radharani also. So in Hare Rama, it is Radha and Krishna, the giver of bliss to Radharani. And Radharani is Hare, and then Rama is Krishna.
So definitely not referring to Balaram or Lord Rama, it's another way to address Krishna?
Well, for us, yeah. Of course, you could have Balaram, but then I guess Hara would have to be Ravati. Of course, it can also refer to Vishnu, one of the Vishnu Sahasranama, so that has to refer to Lakshmi in that case. Or Parsuram and his wife, or Ramchandra and his wife, Sita.
So, to chant Shuddhanam, we have to have proper Sambandhigyan. So, is Sambandhigyan within the holy name, or is it only, we have to get that from the Srimad Bhagavatam primarily? How do, and one other aspect to my question is how do we know if we're developing proper Sambandhigyan? How can we evaluate it, progress in understanding?
And so ultimately the name is absolute, so if you realize the name nicely, then automatically the Sambandha there is there. When you have prema, then automatically you know who you are, you know who Krishna is, so there's no problem. But in the material world, we do have so many types of ignorance and false knowledge, etc. So when we chant the name, then our goal may not be the actual goal that we're supposed to get, prema, it may be something liberation or material enjoyment. The person designated by the name Krishna, we may think of him as a material entity like a devata instead of being Swayam Bhagavan. Or we just may think it's an abstraction and ultimately we merge in Brahman and Krishna doesn't exist. So we get all sorts of mixed philosophies that may contaminate our bhakti also. So therefore in the material world, for the jivas, when they're doing sadhana, they do have to have the correct knowledge. So therefore we need scriptures for that, bhakti scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And they will give us that knowledge. So as I said, it's not so difficult. And in fact, if you just read the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, The Sambandha is there, really, the necessary Sambandha is there. And of course the details we can get from other works like the Sandarbhas, etc. But the real necessary things are just very basic, like we're not God, we're jivas, we're separate, we're different from God, we're dependent on Supreme Lord, dependent on His mercy for everything we do, etc. A material energy is separate from the jiva and from Krishna. That's our Sambandha. Then we also need the proper avidya, not mixed bhakti, but pure bhakti, or pure name versus namabhas. So then we have nectar devotion for that, which we discussed, the definition of uttama bhakti, pure bhakti. And then the goal, then we have Krishna book, it tells who Krishna is, and with his name, form, and qualities and activities.
Just in relation to his question, I found sometimes that there's a lot of wondering about Sambandha. How complicated we make it very clear, but it's very simple.
Yeah.
Prabhupada gave it to us, we knew nothing.
Yeah.
So Prabhupada gave it to us straight. But when you read forum on the internet, there's things like the Quora, and Quora is ask all questions.
Uh-huh.
And then you type in your ISKCON or Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
And you see all the Indians going up. And they come up with this twisted version of what Sambandha is.
Okay.
And then you really realize that, what Prabhupada gave it, as you say, in the Gita worship, it's clear. Introduction of Bhagavad Gita,
Yeah.
Sambandha.
Yeah.
But when you read this stuff, it's like horrendous.
Yeah.
You see all these guys, they come up with this various notion of, they talk about ISKCON. They say, these guys in ISKCON, they're always talking about the Bhagavatam as being one of the Puranic, actually it's not. And then they start going on about, what it's supposed to be or whatever according to them.
Yeah.
And there's Sambandha is actually very twisted.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying there is exactly right. It's very simple because Prabhupada gave it to us very simply, very clear. But in fact, there's some other people on the planet that got it really a bit different going on.
For people of India, their Sambandha is either everybody's a Devata, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Krishna, all the same. You worship and you get the same goal, which is probably material. Or it's impersonal liberation, Mayavad philosophy, and everything ultimately is illusion, the immersion Brahman. those are the ultimate Sambandha Gyan they have. In other words, Brahman is actually no Sambandha because nothing exists except Brahman. And you just merge into it finally, and there's no bhakti.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Just on the question of prema bhakti, I know that over the years a lot of devotees will come to the movement sort of see, look for the older devotees to see if there any expression of prema bhakti. We had this conversation with Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj once, and he was explaining the fact that in his opinion, in his humble opinion, that we had to first of all, like you have to condition, you have the madhyam, and from the madhyam platform, you develop that nishta, that steadiness. From that steadiness, you might get some spontaneity, and then comes the attraction.
Yeah.
And there's sort of like beyond that, there's sort of the spontaneous. The love for God is sort of like in a situation where we have come from so many different millions of births, as you say, and to get to that platform, it's sort of not really incumbent upon us to get there, because actually once we get to that spontaneous level, then we're very attracted to the rules and regulations and the service to our spiritual master, and then Krishna takes it from there. So perhaps you can comment on that.
So we don't have to endeavor, you're saying, or what?
Well, it's sort of the idea, the ultimate idea that, the goal is prayer.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately the goal is prayer, but sort of it's a goal that we may not reach on this path in this particular lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't really,
it's
not detrimental to the fact that we go back to God in this lifetime. No, that continues on.
Though we expect to, or we would like to go quickly, at the same time, practically speaking, we'll probably go slowly, because we see that, like Bharat Maharaj, from Bhava to Prema took him 3 lifetimes. To get up to Bhava, I don't know how many lifetimes he had to go for, and he was a special living entity because he was descendant from Manu. So he was already very special. He was a vibhuti of the Lord, but it took him, just 3 lifetimes to get from bhava to prema. We'll just speak of getting from up to bhava stage, or from ruchi to asakti or whatever like this, or asakti to bhava may take him many lifetimes also. So in that sense, it looks like a long process, and we say bhakti is quick, so they say, why can't do everything one lifetime? It's possible, but usually to do in one lifetime, you need a lot of mercy from a very, very powerful devotee like Narada Muni or something. So we see that Narada Muni gave mercy to the Mrigari the hunter. In 3 months he got bhava stage. But, that's very rare. So we normally have to have done sadhana. It's going to be a little bit slower. But in spite of that, the devotee should not be worried. The main thing is he should feel fortunate that he's a Vaishnava at all, and that birth after birth he is a Vaishnava. So that's the basic prayer of a devotee. He's very humble, and he thinks of himself in terms of, if I can just somehow be born in the house of a Vaishnava, that's the perfection of life. And it may take him thousands of lifetimes or whatever. He doesn't really care about that as long as he can serve the devotees and serve Krishna. And he'll be successful in the end because that's Krishna's promise.
You can't answer my question. It is not all. Can't answer my question, did not answer them. I was just thinking, if we have this combined jam, and we don't have the sort of determination, because practice means you go to practice.
Yeah.
So, how to keep enthusiastic, become determined, to be able to have that knowledge, and then with their intelligence keep that prominent enough in the mind to thing and hopefully get to the goal.
Yeah, so that basically it means we have to lessen the anarthas, etc. So one process, of course, is the process of bhakti. If we do it properly, then gradually the anarthas decrease, so it becomes easier for us. And we don't have to push ourselves so much because we get a natural attraction for the Lord. Before that stage, then the anarthas are stronger, so it becomes more of a struggle. Yeah, we're so attached to the material world that interferes with the process of bhakti, and it's very difficult. So the first ideal stage is nishta, where our attraction to Krishna is little more than our attraction for Maya. So therefore we can, without difficulty, follow the rules and regulations, practice properly and steadily, and feel we're advancing nicely. Before that, it's like topsy-turvy. So that's the anishtata stage. So we have to strive to get to that stage. So how do we get there? Of course, one is the practice itself. We can never give up the practice. And the reason we'll continue is because we have faith. So that the faith has to be quite substantial also. And the other is, the good thing is good association. If we have devotees around us who are practicing nicely, then we'll also be inspired to practice nicely. If we have devotees who are not practicing, or devotees who are very, very weak, then we're not very inspired by that at all. So better we have proper environment of devotees, sadhu sangha, then it makes it much easier. Okay, fine. Hare Krishna.